Hey, this is AV Unit 4A for CollectionDX.com. In this review, I will be highlighting the transformation, special features, and other notables of the Leader Class Autobot Optimus Prime set from the 2009 feature film Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. This review is being broken down into two separate videos. Part 1, which you are watching now, is going to cover the highlights and special features of just truck mode and just robot mode. Part 2 is going to be exclusively covering the transformation and the highlights therein, because that transformation sequence is incredibly complex. The transformation to this day takes a long time, even for me. So I figured that it's a bit of my responsibility to CDX to give the transformation process its due justice. Some of the complaints I'm getting from YouTube, and yes, I do listen to your feedback, some of the complaints I'm getting is that my videos run too long. I can't help it, I'm a blabbermouth, but I'm not just going to do a quick little run through and not give you my opinions or, point out the little things that I find. So for people who are blogging or streaming these videos, I strongly recommend that you stream just this first video that you're watching right now, because the second video is 32 minutes long. The Peterbilt 379 series is used once again for Optimus Prime's alternate mode in Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, just as it was in the first movie. It's recreated very faithfully here. There are very few differences that are really noticeable compared to the two. I think the top of the sleeper cabin is shaped a little differently. The nose might be just a hair longer, and there are some minor robot parts that are exposed in back. That's not to say that robot parts are not exposed at all. For example, you can see back here, just in front of this structure here, this round thing here is called the fifth wheel. Just in front of the fifth wheel, it's not an actual wheel, but that's what it's called. Just in front of it, you can see, the kind of the crotch, the waist area down here for Optimus. So really, that's the most obvious area. These are his blue-colored knee guards right there. So. The nose might be, slightly longer. Looking at it from a side view, you can see parts of Optimus's feet. Well, just this is feet. Like this whole section right here is just his foot. It's just been extended outwards. Watch part 2 to figure out what I mean by that. You can see, the robot's feet are here. Feet are right here. Did I just say feet? Yeah, I did. Sorry about that. And then, you can see the back of his leg right here. But the 379, you can still see mechanical parts hanging out under there. So really, it's not without precedence, or rather, it's not unexpected to see machinery under there. Some features that make welcome return: the brake lights in back, even though they're obviously supposed to be red and white, they're all transparent, they're all clear. But they are transparent plastic, which is nice, and they closely resemble. You can't imagine how close this toy is to resembling the character in the movies. And I'm not just talking about robot mode either. This is a very faithful recreation, with the exception of the Autobot logo right there, which isn't really there. However, the Autobot logo does appear right on the tippy nose there. That's great. The headlights are transparent as well. Let's see. Can somebody tell me what these things are? They're on real trucks, obviously, or else they wouldn't be on the toy, but I can't really figure out what they are. So I know they're probably the answers, like a fuel filter, air pump, I don't know what. Ordinarily, the side and rear view mirrors would be sticking out, quite a distance from the sides, but they just turn out to be these little plastic tabs that are molded right into the sides of the truck. The smokestacks are connected directly to the fuel tanks. This is more for the convenience of the transformation than because it looks, accurate to the actual 379. On the actual model, or on the actual truck, it'll actually fold in and kind of disappear into the engine for obvious reasons. The bulkhead is recreated here, although it's not parallel bars. It's all molded in one piece. This is actually the cover for the battery compartment right here. You can see the doors sitting down, or you can see the screws sitting down here. But what's really cool about this is you can see how twisted up this toy is. These are his hips right here. Well, this is actually his butt right here. And these are his heels, and these are his his legs take up that entire length. That's pretty wild. There is no PVC. This is all pretty much ABS plastic. It's that hard, tough stuff. The only exception I've found is the smokestacks are rubber, and this is no doubt a safety precaution. They're a little pivoted. They're pivoted on either end at their mounting points, so you can actually point these forward, and he'll actually look like a bull. Snort, snort. So there's that. Aside from rolling around very nicely on all 6 ABS wheels, they're black. The hubcaps have all been painted, of course. He has his, this is a leader class figure, and thus denotes a special feature, and that is an electronic feature. While Optimus does have an electronic light and sound feature, they don't tell you how to activate it in truck mode. So, yeah, go figure. The lights pop in from the cab, or from the inside of the cab. The activation trigger, there's a little tiny square down here, and it's got a triangle on it that's pointing downwards. What you do is simply press in on it, and you get this. Now, if you hold it down, it'll go for, you know, as long as you're holding it. And you can see that the LEDs don't actually sit inside of the cab itself, but they actually sit inside the torso, which is inside of the sleeper compartment here. So, it takes 2 AA batteries, and I believe that the sample batteries sit in here. I don't know if that's an actual 379's engine. I suspect the Hasbro just threw in a generic diesel engine idling, and that was it. Honestly, I would have liked an engine roaring or a horn beeping or something like that, but I don't know, truck idling, if we wanted to, I mean, if they're going to give us the sounds of a truck idling, I guess Hasbro is wanting us to make up our own sound effects, in which case, why even bother going to the trouble of putting sound effects in there to begin with? Hasbro really gave us a very high-quality specimen for 2009. The level of detail that goes into this thing is near jaw-dropping, and perhaps comparable only to the highest quality of Transformer products in the last 25 years. Even though the mechanics of the toy are more complex, I would put the surface detail more or less right next to Primus from 2005, which was a pretty outstanding toy. Primus was a simpler toy to transform, but you had level 2 and level 3 detailing on it, and this thing gets close to it, especially in the torso details, in the front. Or I should say in the legs, just in general, and even in the upper arms, which are one of my favorite parts, just because of the extra detailing, the Mecha Live feature, which I'll be getting to in a moment here. Some of the examples of the limits of the posing are thus: even though the head is, like I said, it's one of my favorite sculpted parts. Even the back of his head, it's amazing. It almost looks like a second face on there. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I've seen the CGI model, or at least what's been provided through PR releases. The level, like I said, the level of detail in this thing is outstanding. But for example, the head, even though the top of the shoulders are more or less right where they're supposed to be, the chin will actually bump into the shoulders. You can't turn it any further left or right than that. That's the best you could do. So what I found is, and I'm going to try and do this without activating the Mecha Live feature, with a little game I play with myself. Can I actually move the head and torso plates around without activating the Mecha Live feature? Turns out I can. If you just move it that little bit, you can see now the head can turn back and forth as much as you want to. And really, it doesn't spoil the profile, or it doesn't make him look extra tall. So that's not really a problem. As far as that option, but the fact that you have to lift up a little bit on it, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but, whatever. For the Mech Alive feature in his torso, it's also nice that these things that the smokestacks are hinged, and that they're made of rubber, so, it won't bump into anything up here. You can tell that the designers went all out. I mean, this is pretty crazy. I know I'm getting off of articulation for a moment here, but when you start talking about the sun visors, just flipping up and, even moving. I mean, if it had been just, up and down, that would have been crazy. But not only do you have like a regular pivoting joint, but you got a ball and socket joint in there, so you can actually twist this thing around in all manner of direction, even though they're really not supposed to point, horizontally like that. Another posing oddity I've encountered is that in the hips, this silver painted tab right here, you can do the leg to about here, but then what happens is the tab will actually bump into the joint there for the wheel, and I've noticed you actually have to push it beyond a little bit, and so what's starting to happen now is that the paint is starting to be scratched off on both sides, so that's a bit of a problem. Even though the wheels are supposed to be one above the other, because of the restriction of the toy, the wheels couldn't really be put, this lower wheel couldn't really be put any further down because it would have interfered with the bending of the knee, and even how the toolbox ends up here. That's a different complaint right there. So really, to have the upper wheel treated as I don't know, side panel, skirt arm, or whatever, was an appropriate modification, I thought. I liked it. The feet are actually on the, as far as I'm aware, they're on the largest ball and socket joints for a Transformer that I've ever seen. Obviously necessary for the transformation, bend it way down like that. But the problem is, believe it or not, he's a little bit on the back heavy because of the kibble. The screen accurate kibble, with the exception of the mudguards, of course, that's screen accurate kibble. But the thing is, he is nonetheless a little on the back heavy side, so you do have to tilt him forward a little. Well, unfortunately, despite the kind of large gap that you see right there, the legs really can't go any further forward than that. I mean, even with this tiniest of tabs sitting on the top there is restrictive, so you can't really tilt the feet forward any further than that. You get good side-to-side motion, well, maybe not, because the side of the foot actually bumps into this panel. If you choose too much far forward, well, the panel actually pops out. So, you're kind of restricted on what you can do with the feet. It's fortunate, though, that even though the hip can twist, you can see right there, even though the hip can twist, well, it can't twist any further outwards than that. So you can't have it twist inwards for some of those running poses or jumping poses or fighting stances or whatever it is. You can't do that. The biggest restriction, however, probably lies in the action feature of the toy, which is the dual swords. I'll get into that in a moment here. The majority of the joints ratchet very evenly. So like I said, it's got a good range of motion, but it's a little limited. On the other hand, there are a couple of features that I really like as regards to the function of the toy. I obviously mentioned the sun visors. I also like the knee guards, and how even though the knee guards they're free turning, I still like that you can actually pull them out. I by default I make them a little diagonal, just because it looks nice. Even though they don't appear there in the movie, the toolbox is actually kind of, well, actually I don't know where the toolboxes eventually end up, but it's kind of nice that we need to be reminded, as in the movie, that this is actually a truck that this thing changes into. So to have something that doesn't look techno-organic or whatever you call it, I guess this would be techno-organic, I don't know. Just something to remind us, other than wheels and some windows in the front there. We need to be reminded that this thing is a transform, not just a mishmash of 10,108 parts to it. But one of the things I really like in the posing is in the hips, specifically the front of the hips. You see these blue panels, which I already pointed out over here. They move fine, whatever it is. But then what I also like, and then this turns. But what I really like is watch how the blue panels, how this blue panel reacts to when I twist the leg outwards. Watch this. The blue panel stays stationary. I don't know if it does that in the movie, but for the toy, that is epic. That is just a quirky little detail that is completely unnecessary, and yet it adds a level of character to the toy that you can't really recreate with something like Mech Alive or something like that. Well, maybe you could, with the upper arms. Oh yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention. I really like how the 2007 version of Optimus Prime, Leader Class Optimus Prime, had something called Advanced Automorph, which was basically, it was tied into the light and sound feature. You pressed a button down here and the head shot up, the torso split apart, and he goes, "I am Optimus Prime," or something like that. Unfortunately, I don't have him here to compare against this version. But one of the things in that toy that was kind of striking is that he also had automorph in the feet. You move the bumper around and you move the grill around, and things flipped around and things like that. Well, this guy obviously doesn't have automorph. He has Mech Alive, which you can only use in robot mode. But I still like what they did with the feet. This right here is actually the grill pattern, the bumper, the headlight, and half the grill from the truck mode, and it just folds in there, snaps in place, and boom, just completely disappears. I mean, you do not suspect it whatsoever unless you flip it over, and that's obviously not how it happens in the movies, because it kind of disappears up into the torso, as it should. You can kind of see it right there, the grill line where the speakers are, but it's still pretty awesome they were able to make it disappear like that without you even noticing it. That's a pretty amazing feature. Aside from the Mech Alive, there is his weapon feature, and that is his swords. Yes, swords is in plural. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, I'm about to spoil it for you. In this feature, unlike the 2007 version, there's no switch on the side, and it's not a gun that pops out. There's a switch on the side here, which if you push upwards, it'll flip down, and you get his sword. Now, yeah, it doesn't shoot forward, blah, 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 blah. Hey, at least we got that spring out weapon, okay? That's what impresses me. And the sword actually looks like it does in the movies, That's pretty awesome. So, it's kind of weird, though. They made the sword transparent, like it's transparent orange, and then they painted it over. They didn't even, if they wanted to paint it, they should have painted some, excuse me, I got the hiccups. They should have put some silver on there. Don't put more orange on it. So anyways, dealing with swords, and then, lo and behold, he actually has two of these swords, so he can kick Grinder's ass, which was also an epic scene in the movie. There is, however, a rather large downside to these very awesome swords, and that is what happens to them when they're stored. You'll notice this arm, the left arm, is not tilted straight down, and it's not turned straight forward. It's actually tilted to the side a little bit. With this arm, I can pull it straight, and I can't have it point down. My wrist is about to break. I apologize. The problem is these blades. These blades are so long that, and really they have to be in order to get this. This is like almost 2 inches right here. So they had to have it, be that long. But the problem is when it's stored up, it actually runs parallel to the rest of the lower arm, the forearm. And so it comes into conflict with this panel up here and how it's connected. So I don't know, unless you're frickin' Optimus Prime, you will never, ever, 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 with this toy at least, be able to get the sword. You will never be able to get the arm to line up perfectly straight up and down and twist it all the way around. The only alternative I came up with is to open up the panel a little bit. You can see this is supposed to be the blue panel is supposed to be flush with the upper arm, and here you can see it's actually tilted just at a slight angle, and then the sword is just kind of wedged in there. Now, you probably, why didn't they, shift things around? Why not just make the sword shorter? Well, if they made the sword shorter, quite frankly, you wouldn't even have a sword. So, the only time you're going to be able to hold the arm straight and level is when it's sticking out. So, that is, and really, it does become an irritant with posing as well, because you can't turn the elbows inwards unless the swords are out. And another thing I should point out while I'm in the neighborhood is that even if the swords were not an issue, the side panels are an issue. You can see there's a rod. There's a silver-colored metal rod that actually runs the whole length. It runs from here to here. Well, the problem is, it's in its lowered position right now. Like, this is the position it would be in if it were in truck mode. But the problem is, you can see when it's in this position, it's already bumping up against this shoulder panel. The only alternative would be to, tilt the shoulder panel up, and then you could push it up. Now, while this looks more screen accurate, as screen accurate as you can get, unfortunately, you can't put that shoulder panel down. It's always open. And again, you can see it's always in conflict. You're not going to be able to turn the elbow in or out. So again, by default, I keep the panels forward. Okay, that's giving me more trouble than I need to. But even with that, you can see in this position the elbows cannot turn outwards. They're designed to turn outwards, and yeah, it can turn inwards, but it just can't turn outwards unless you open up that panel. So it's a nice feature to have. It's a great feature to have. It's just, I don't know if it was poor execution or if it's just them's the breaks, kiddo. Either way, it's a great feature to have. I love that it's spring-powered sword. It's just, I'm not going to call it sloppy, and I'm not going to bash them for trying to give us the spring-out feature and having to sacrifice the articulation.